Welcome back. I am Largo, and today we are checking out another SCP video. Today it's going to be SCP-956, the Childbreaker. This video was a commenter's suggestion, and I have no clue what it is, except it's called the Childbreaker, and it looks like a bear or something. According to this little title screen here, it's violent with a risk of death to children. Do not consume mutation properties. Ooh, seems like we're getting into one of the classic style SCPs that's dangerous and horrific. So let's go ahead and jump right into it and find out what the Childbreaker is.
Subject: Child D-Class and SCP-956. It has been decided by the Ethics Committee and the O5 Council that any further testing with SCP-956 that requires the use of D-Class personnel, specifically children, will require O5 approval. By this point, we know as much as we need to about SCP-956's effects on them, and we cannot afford unnecessary testing. It's supplying us with a new batch of D-Class infants later this week. Until then, D-Class infants are being reserved for essential purposes only.
D-Class infants. Okay, that's new to me. I was fully aware that we had D-Class adults, a lot of whom were prisoners or, essentially people with no other options, things like that. Also, I know that there's some D-Classes that seem to be clones, or D-Classes that are offshoots of other SCPs, kind of, like Tyler, for instance. But this is the first time I'm hearing about D-Class infants. So, that's a new and horrifying thing to learn. All right.
Director.
The Childbreaker. Man, this is this is not sounding good.
SCP-956 appears to be a common piñata resembling an unknown quadruped. Tests have revealed that although superficially similar to papier-mâché, SCP-956 is constructed of various amounts of glue, sugar, an unidentified fur, and human tissue. SCP-956 has also shown to be highly resistant to any sort of bludgeoning damage, with large amounts of crushing force showing no damage to its structural integrity, though the use of gunfire as well as heat and flame have shown to be effective. By default, SCP-956 remains in a passive state. It shows no signs of locomotion or intelligence, and displays no hostility. As long as the item's activation requirement is not met, the item will remain in this state indefinitely. See Addendum 956-A. SCP-956 enters its active state when a human under the age of 12 years enters within meters of it. Approximately 2 seconds after entering the active zone, the child becomes unable to move, holding any stance they had at the time. The victim is incapable of motion or speech, although it remains alive, and its rapidly moving eyes suggest that it retains awareness. SCP-956 moves towards the victim and bludgeons him or her until the torso ruptures. Upon breach, the victim's body discharges a large pile of unmarked candy, ranging from to pieces. Instances of this candy are designated as SCP-956-1. SCP-956 repeats this for any other immobilized victims before returning to a docile state. A victim can be removed from SCP-956's activation range if retrieved promptly. Upon moving the victim meters away from it, SCP-956 returns to its passive state. The victim, however, shows no signs of recovering from its immobilized state.
Ooh, man, this thing is pretty brutal already. Seems to inflict permanent paralysis across the entire body with the exception of the eyes. Wow, that's kind of horrific. That would be kind of like, I guess, some form of almost like sleep paralysis, where kind of technically asleep, but you're awake, but it's like your body's asleep and you can't move or do anything. Man, that's some horrific stuff. And then it bludgeons them to death like a piñata and candy and stuff comes out of them. This is brutal, man, especially since it's geared specifically to affect children.
and appears to remain in such a state indefinitely. Autopsies of unbroken victims show that their body has severely dehydrated, leaving them brittle. Autopsies also revealed that pieces of SCP-956-1 had begun to grow out of the victim's organs, using the tissue as a component. The amount of SCP-956-1 appears to be directly correlated to time spent in SCP-956's activation radius. SCP-956-1's effects vary depending upon the age of the person consuming them. Humans at the age of 12 years or older go into seizure within minutes of consumption, with a percent possibility of cardiac arrest. There is an approximate % chance of survival for such subjects. Animals suffer similar effects regardless of age. Children under the age of 12 undergo a different effect. They first enter a similar state to the immobilized victims of SCP-956, although they assume a standing stance with their arms resting in front of them. Their body then... The process takes minutes to complete. Upon completion, the victim has transformed into another instance of SCP-956. These copies behave identically to SCP-956. There is a...
If you eat the candy that comes out of it, as an adult, you possibly suffer cardiac arrest and could potentially die from it. As a child under 12, you actually are forcibly turned into another one of these piñatas, and those piñatas can act the same as the original and basically kind of spread this effect. Man, that's crazy. Now, they did say fireworks on it, so I'm assuming they have kept the original piñata, and any instances that were duplicated were then incinerated, I guess. I mean, they haven't really said anything yet, but that's what I would assume, because I don't see any purpose in keeping multiple copies of the piñata. That just seems unnecessarily dangerous.
0% chance of survival for the victim. Special Containment Procedures. SCP-956 is to be kept at the approximate centre of a concrete room at all times. The door is to be locked with an armed guard posted to prevent unauthorised access. Entrance by research personnel into the room is only permitted once SCP-956 has entered a dormant state. Permission to bring a subject into the room must be cleared by O5 approval to decrease the occurrence of SCP-956-1, as well as... Unless for testing, individuals fulfilling SCP-956's activation requirement are not to be brought within 200 meters of SCP-956's containment area. Surveillance is to be maintained through security footage at all times. Instances of SCP-956-1 are kept in a neighbouring room and are to be maintained at a temperature of -4 degrees Celsius in order to prevent melting or destruction. Any use of SCP-956-1 is to be authorised by at least one member of the O5 and to be carried out in a room identical to SCP-956's containment chamber. Any excess SCP-956-1 created by tests with SCP-956 is to be incinerated unless authorised by personnel with security clearance 4 or higher, as are any extraneous instances of SCP-956.
Okay, so they do in fact incinerate any extra candy and any extra instances of 956, the piñata. So yeah, they only need to keep one, because yeah, definitely, it doesn't make sense for them to keep more than one, especially if they're exactly identical and they do the same thing. If there's no variation in it, then there's no point in keeping more than one of them.
6. Addendum 956-A. SCP-956 has recently begun to show locomotion outside of testing. It began to wander around its containment, tracing the perimeter of the room. It did this for about an hour before staring at a spot on the wall. Review of footage shows that it faced this wall after deactivating during previous tests. Security has confirmed that SCP-956 is facing directly towards an elementary school. The school is kilometers away, Reclassification to Euclid status requested.
Yeah, not good. The thing can move on it, so it can move on its own, which is not good, especially considering that it can apparently tell where children are, or at least where they're gathered in groups. So this definitely implies that if this thing were just left out in the real world, that it would potentially make its way to a school, which, you know, could very easily result in, like, I guess a horrific massacre, you could call it. They didn't really mention anything about it being able to paralyze adults, but it definitely does it to children. This is a tough one, because think about it, if it got to a school, like all the kids are basically, even if none of them are actually killed, they would all be permanently paralyzed. So, I mean, essentially their lives are over. Man, and that would have to be a cover up from the Foundation too. They would have to clean all that up, and oh my goodness, dude. This one's like particularly brutal because it's, you know, aimed at children.
Dr. Reclassification to Euclid granted. If its effects appear to reach beyond its containment, it is to be transferred to site, which should keep it far enough away from potential victims. Retrieve any paralyzed victims or SCP-956-1 and administer Class A amnestics to witnesses and family. We don't need any more of these things around.
Alright guys, that was SCP-956, the Child Breaker. Definitely a child breaker. There's no question about that. Yeah. Like I said, this one is particularly brutal. It's actually quite insidious as well, because it's, you know, presented as something, you know, friendly, something that children identify with treats and candy and, you know, parties and having a good time. So the mere sight of it would just attract children, just period. Especially if it was just left out on a sidewalk somewhere and a child saw it, yeah, they would immediately go towards it. I mean, so it's definitely has like this insidious nature where it's like a child trap, really. The way that it does it as well. You know, even if you manage to get the child out of the radius of 956, it seems like the paralysis is permanent. So that's an end to their livelihood, to their well-being. I mean, they would have to be kept alive on like feeding tubes and things. And at that point, it's like, you know, this is a harsh one, guys. I'm not gonna lie. I mean, it's real short, it's real simple, it's real easy to understand. There's not too much to it, and it's not even like that dangerous to adults. But it's like I said, man, it's just really insidious, really evil is really the only word I got for it, man. It's like evil. My only questions are like, where did this come from? Is this like a biological entity that came from a different world? Is it something that came from Dr. Wondertainment or from the factory or something? Because I mean, this is pretty brutal, guys. Also, it brought to light the fact that there's D-class infants, and that is still mind-boggling to me that that's even a thing. D-class infants, just wow. Okay. Overall, though, decent SCP. As far as SCP goes, I know a lot of the early SCPs are very horror themed in nature, and this definitely fits that bill. As far as an SCP goes, it's a pretty good one. It's something that could very easily, quietly make its way into our world and target the weakest and most vulnerable of our society, which is children. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I hope you guys enjoyed the reaction. If you did, go ahead and click that like button, and go ahead and click that subscribe button if you want to see more reactions like this. As always, guys, leave a comment down below with your own suggestions as to what videos we should react to next. Thanks so much for stopping by, guys. Thanks for watching the video. take care of yourselves, and have a great day.